Hi, it's Nicola Bird here from littlepeaceofmind.co.uk. I wanted to talk to you about something that I've been seeing recently about teenagers, but really all of us. So I was reading a book called The Coddling of the American Mind. Someone happened to mention it at a conference I was at, and so I picked it up and I started reading it. And I haven't finished reading it yet. It's an interesting book, but one of the things that caught my mind was this concept of, one of the things the authors talk about in the book is how we have got a tendency these days to treat our children as if they're fragile, as if words or ideas or philosophies can be somehow dangerous to them, can threaten them, can trigger them, can damage our kids in some ways. And so the book is about the impact of that being seen on American campuses. And so the authors are talking about this concept of fragility. But then what they start to introduce is like, our kids aren't fragile. Human beings aren't fragile. And in fact, we have this inbuilt resilience. Like we bounce back, we're resilient, we have our own kind of innate well-being. But then the authors take it a step further and they say, no, not only are our kids not fragile, not only are they resilient, but they're anti-fragile. And what they mean by that is something that gets stronger with every wobble, right? So every wobble, it's not that it bounces back from the wobble, but it becomes stronger, becomes stronger. And it reminded me of, I was talking with a client the other day and we were kind of discussing our teenagers and their crazy internal lives. And it suddenly sprung to mind my experience of being out in the garden. And what a lot of us are doing who are growing at the moment in the garden is that this is the time of year where we take our baby seedlings and we're about to plant them out into the garden, but they need to be hardened off first. So hardening off is just a process where you take a young seedling that's been in a greenhouse and you start to expose it to the light and the air and the day and outside, basically. You start to expose it to the outside and you put it out for a few hours a day and then a bit longer and then overnight. And you do that for about 7 to 10 days before you plant it in the garden. And what happens to the plant in that time is the wind and the rain and the sun and the heat and it creates a tougher skin on the outside, on the surface of the plant, so that when you plant it out into the garden, it can handle the weather a bit better, and it's literally tougher. The slugs can't bite it because the skin is tougher. And so your plants are far more likely to thrive and survive in the ground if you harden them off first. If you take them straight from the greenhouse, put them in the ground, the slugs will get them. And it struck me as I was talking to my client that this is what the teenage years are. Right, we have our babies inside in the greenhouse, right, in their primary school, in their start of their secondary school journey, and then I tell you, if we take those kids that have been so nurtured and looked after, protected them from all the knocks of life, if you like, and send them off to university, the slugs will get them. But the teenage years, these years of navigating friendships and social media and gender identity issues and phone use and screens and computer games and boyfriends, girlfriends, like everything that they navigate in these years, these in-between years, this is the hardening off process. This is the letting them be out in the garden. Now, what happens with many of the gardeners that I grow along with is that they either are too scared to put their plants out in the garden because they're worried about the damage that will happen to them. They treat their plants like they're fragile, or they put them out and then they rescue them at the first breath of wind, right? Bring them back in again. And they put them out and they bring them back in again. And the plants never have the chance to realize their own resilience. They never have the chance for it to become real, that they grow, that they mature, that they evolve, that they learn, that they change as a result of being out in the garden. They're not given the chance to realize that because they're treated as if they're fragile and brought back in all the time. The hardening off process, the hard knocks, the wind, the rain, that everything is necessary for the plant to be capable to go out into the garden. They need this period of navigation in their lives to become fully capable human beings, adults, when they go out into the world. So the slugs don't get them. And not only are they capable of realizing their own resilience and anti-fragility, they're designed for it. They require it, but they're designed for it. They thrive if you let them go through that process. Now, I say teenagers because you might have a teenager and this might be resonating. For me, realizing that actually these are the hardening off years. It's supposed to be windy and rainy out here, right? It's windy and rainy out here so that when they go out into the world, they're hardened off, right? Not hardened off, but like they've realized their own ability to be okay through all of it. They've worked their way through it. They've seen their ability to navigate life, which you don't get to see unless it throws some crap at you. So I've talked about this with teenagers, but really it's true for all of us. Like my years of anxiety and stress and panic attacks were like my hardening off years. They're an opportunity for us to realize our own resilience, to realize a deeper truth about how life works, to realize our anti-fragility. Not even just our own resilience, but our anti-fragility. It's like this period was required for what comes next. And when I consider that, it changes my relationship to the struggles my teenagers go through. It changes my relationship to the clients that I work with. It changes the relationship to my own experience, my own journey, my own current struggles, and my own past struggles. When I see how beautiful the design is, when I appreciate the intelligence behind the design of all of it. My mind can protest. My teenagers' minds protest at the struggles they have to go through. I struggle my mind protests at the struggles they have to go through. My mind protests at the struggles I have to go through and that my clients go through. And I don't like it. But at a deeper level, I can see that intelligence. In the book, they talk about the sort of the old wisdom of what doesn't kill you makes you stronger. And it's not that we actively go out looking for challenges and ways to get outside our comfort zone. It's, to my mind, so old school. But it's that when life will continually bring us this series of challenges so that we can realize our own anti-fragility. Because what's required of us next is that we go through this stage and we realize that for ourselves right now. Just allows me to have a different relationship with the various challenges of life. I hope that's been helpful to you. I hope that makes sense to you. And if you have teenage kids, I hope that's really helpful to you. It certainly was to me.